Anwar, and Frank Danna. Welcome, Mohammad and Frank. We're very excited to have you here today.
Hello, Julia. Thank you for having us.
Hey, Julia, this is going to be a lot of fun. We're
It
very
is.
excited.
It is great. I'll give some quick housekeeping information for our audience, and then we'll learn a little bit more about our guests. There'll be time for some questions at the end of the presentation, so please click the comments question button below the video to ask your questions throughout the webinar. Also, as a reminder, the recording will be available tomorrow. Now, to properly introduce our guests, Mohammad Anwar is the president and CEO of Softway and Culture Plus, co-creator and facilitator of Seneca Leaders, co-host of Love as a Business Strategy podcast, and a member of Forbes Business Council. He started Softway as a technology services company with his family at the age of 20, while pursuing his BS in computer science with a minor in mathematics. Frank Danna is the director of culture at Softway and Culture Plus and the co-creator of Seneca Suites of products and services, co-host of Softway's Love as a Business Strategy podcast. Frank has mastered the skill of storytelling through the study of human behavior, video content, mobile applications, design, and communication. Frank has been a key speaker at various conferences across the globe, including SXSW in Austin, Texas, IRCE, and Snap Happen. And now I'll turn it over to you, and you can take it away from here.
Thank you, Julia.
Awesome. Well, we're very excited to be here, everyone. Thank you for introducing us. This is my partner in crime, Mohammad Anwar. I've actually known Mohammad since I was 18 years old. No joke. And since I'm 19, it's only been a year. I'm kidding. That is not true. But we've had a lot of fun together over the years. And today we're going to tell you a story. We're going to talk about resilience, belonging, and success. But we're going to do that through framing up and showcasing the book that we wrote about the experiences that we had and some of the behaviors that we showcased that led us to realize the need for a book called Love as a Business Strategy. And if the word love freaks you out, give us about 5 to 6 minutes. Okay. We'll explain it, but we need some time. But Mohammad, I want to kick things over to you so you can get us started with our presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, Frank. And I think I know you for almost, I don't know, I'd have to say 15 years now. So
it's been a while. And the folks that are doing math are like, okay, all right. He's got a good year for his early 30s. Okay.
Awesome. Very good. Well, thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to share our story. So I'll go ahead and begin. As Julia introduced me, I am Mohammad Anwar, the president and CEO of Softway and Culture Plus. And I started the company Softway originally as a technology firm almost 19 years ago now when I was 20 years old. So you could do that calculation there. But 10 years into the business, I had believed that I had reached the pinnacle of success. You know, our company was thriving. I was driving my fancy cars, flying my planes around Texas, and I was living the life of an entrepreneur or living the American dream, if you could say that, especially because I'm an immigrant to this country. And it was all working great. And then about 2 years later, 2015 hit, and our company was on the verge of bankruptcy. It wasn't working. We were about to go bankrupt, lose the entire business. We were hemorrhaging cash. Our organization was losing people left and right. And the organization was stifled by a toxic culture that was perpetuated by my behaviors, my selfish behaviors, and my attitude. And it was basically an environment of fear, and I was responsible for creating much of that environment. And I behaved however I wanted to behave. When I would walk the hallways, it would grow quiet. And there was many a times that people quit after just conversing with me. I was just downright not very respectful. I belittled people and I disrespected a lot of them. And so, yeah, that was a little bit about me. And Frank can share with you a little bit more about that.
I can't. I think that email you sent the entire US team about the refrigerator did not help at all, Mohammad. And as a matter of fact, I have a screenshot of that email that is from my inbox to prove it out. He really did act like this. One of my favorite parts about this email that you sent us, Mohammed, is when you said, this just demonstrates the lack of hygiene, discipline, and it shows how lazy some of you guys can be to throw trash. I mean, empty bags and empty milk cartons, seriously? And you even call into question my own refrigerator at my house. Like, literally, I read this and thought, I need to go home and clean my refrigerator because somehow he knows. But, Mohammed, I for folks that are wondering, like, okay, was he really like that? Did he really act in those ways? This is one of the emails and the experiences that many of us had as a result of Muhammad's behavior at this time.
I agree, and unfortunately, you know, it's in writing, and I can't seem
It
to
exists.
delete that email. It's out there, and
it's in the book too.
Definitely something I'm embarrassed of, but at the same time, I'm making it a good humbling moment for me and learning moment for me for sure. So thank you, Frank, for sharing.
You're very welcome.
Email.
I'm glad I could bring this up. It's on every device. It got out of our company. It was forwarded to ex-employees. It was talked about on Glassdoor. We're Glassdoor famous as a result of it. But anyway, we can keep going.
Awesome. So pretty soon, into the fourth quarter of 2015, our darkest day had arrived. And this was the day I had to make the tough decision, but a decision I own, which was to let go a big portion of our staff. We had to lay off almost 100 employees in our organization in order to keep the company surviving. The unfortunate thing is that I did so in a very inhumane manner, the actual process of layoffs. And, at that point in time, we were almost 260 plus employees, and we were laying off more than 1/3 of our workforce. So after that, I had reached the lowest point in my career and possibly even my life, because I did not know what was the future for me and or for Softway. I had no idea if our company would survive another month. I really didn't know if I even knew how to take the company forward. So I was at my all-time low. And 2 weeks after the layoffs, I happened to get tickets to go to a University of Houston football game where I graduated from with my brother. And I really was looking forward to that game because I needed something positive in my life after everything that had been going on. And this was a highly anticipated game. It was a 2015 season for Houston where they were 9-0 and they were going into their 10th game. And this would have been their 10th victory. And as I was watching the game going to the fourth quarter, we were losing by 20 points. Ooh. And ESPN Game Tracker predicted we had 0.1% chance of winning that night. So I was disappointed. I wanted to leave the stadium early because of my disappointment. But something inside of me told me, stay back, stay there till the end, watch the team, even if they lose. And I'm glad I stayed back because they ended up winning that night by a point with less than 30 seconds left in the fourth quarter. And that just rejuvenated me. It just changed something inside of me, sparked this renewed energy of not giving up. And I wanted to go back that Monday and continue to fight for our company and not give up. And I started to see Softway through the eyes of the Houston Cougar football team. And I started envisioning our own fourth quarter financial comeback. And so Monday arrived and I woke up in the morning ready to go fight. And I arrived at the office and joined Facebook Live to see then Coach Tom Herman speak to the press because I was so inspired by what they had done that season. I wanted to hear what Coach Herman had to say. And there was a question that was asked by the press reporters as to what garnered the resilience in his team and how they ended up pulling off that comeback victory. And what he said changed my life forever. And how he responded to that question was by answering it with saying that it was the culture of love that the team had for each other. It was the love and support that each team member had for one another. And that it's that love for one another that helped them not only win that night, but that's how championship teams are built. And it's not the love you dog kind of love. It's the genuine love, you have my heart in your hands kind of love. And as he began to explain that, I was just going through this realization, and I was starting to realize that, oh my gosh, this is something that I've never heard before. But yet I'm so inspired by the Houston Cougar football team. And, they've proven it on the field and even future into the seasons thereafter. And so, in a moment of introspection, I began to ask myself, do I love my team? And the answer was a resounding no, I do not. And so I began to commit to myself that I needed to create a culture of love. And I need to do that by first beginning to transform myself so I may become a trusting, vulnerable, and empathetic leader who creates an environment for people to be empowered, make mistakes, forgive one another, and thereby create an environment of inclusion. And I'm still on this journey. It's a permanent state of transformation. Um, it's something that I will never stop striving for. But at the same time, it took me a lot of years to rebuild the trust and faith with the team. And as I began on this journey, um, and trying to do anything and everything I could do to serve my team and help our team and see that Softway survives, I saw that our people, our team members began to change their way that they showed up to work. They began to put their heart and soul into the workplace, and they began to do things for me that I never expected. And when they had every opportunity to take a job next door or across the street, knowing the financial uncertainty of Software, they decided to stick with it. They decided to stay back and not give up and fight the fight with me, beside me, to ensure that Software would succeed. And so we went from not just surviving, but to thriving as a result of that transformation.
And that's why we wrote love as a business strategy. But now I want to address the elephant in the room. I want to, the HR folks can breathe a sigh of relief. You might be thinking, what is love as a business strategy? You might think, okay, it's a Hallmark rom-com where the hot best friend is the soulmate. That's not true. Or something that strikes fear in the hearts of all HR professionals. But I'm here to set the record straight. When we say love, we want to ensure you that what we're talking about is putting people first, people being considered and valued, thinking about the faces, the lives, the livelihoods in an organization. This is an action about how we treat each other. Love as a business strategy is doing things out of care for other people. It means embracing the hard conversations. When you love someone the way we look at love, you can receive feedback in real time. You can have difficult and challenging conversations that push you to create and find new ways of doing things as a team, as a group of individuals, or even as peers. Love as a business strategy means building processes, tools, and policies that align the people of your business with the profit. So much so that you're able to actually improve your profits when you focus on your people. And we'll talk more about what this actually looked like for Softway at the end. It means that growing with others happens through accountability and trust. Love as a business strategy means creating opportunities for more accountability and fosters more trust inside of a company. But there is one thing I want to share with you before we move on, and that's that love ain't easy. Software's problems didn't magically disappear. Our culture didn't change overnight. This transformation took time, it took effort. And honestly, we're still working on it, just like Mohammad said. As a team, as individuals, love isn't something that immediately switches on. It is a process that you go through to consider the needs and care for other people in a way that creates a new environment and experience for people. And Mohammed, to build a great culture, I think we need to understand what culture is, right?
Absolutely. So, culture is nothing but uh, the way we treat each other and the way we
Yeah.
experience each other at the workplace. it's not always the perks and the benefits or the pool table, the ping pong table, and the free food. Those are all really good perks and benefits, and they're important, and we should always advocate for it. But you could have all of that and still be treated, uh, mistreated and not valued and not respected. And that experience that you go through with each other, with your coworkers, with your boss, with inside of the organization, is really what defines culture.
Hmm.
So culture is ultimately the culmination of behaviors and how we behave with one another. And so once we recognize that culture is essentially behaviors, we needed to figure out how to change the culture by changing the behaviors of our organization. And it wasn't until I had a aha moment with my brother Taj that I recognized how we should approach it. So before I go to that lesson, I want to introduce you to my brother Taj.
Oh yeah.
He he is the managing director of our Bangalore, India operations, and he loves driving,
Hmm.
but he is one crazy driver.
Mohammed, he's not just a crazy driver. Like when I went to India for the first time, and Taj is like, "Let me drive you around town." This man drives backwards, upwards, like up. He drove up a building. I'm kidding. He didn't do that. But he. There are no rules in India, and he makes sure that there are no rules for him driving. I literally thought I was gonna die. Like literally, I thought I was gonna die. Blinkers don't exist, Mohammed. Brakes don't exist. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I know, Frank, that was definitely a shock for you. So, but just to give you a little bit of perspective, driving in India is definitely an experience. You have the rickshaws, the people, the livestock, the goats, or even wild elephants
Yeah,
that you find on the street. And this is no joke, this is real. And ultimately, the traffic in India is very chaotic, but yet it is organized chaos.
it's
Somehow
wild.
the traffic keeps moving and people get from destination to destination. And my brother has, learned to drive there, been raised there, grown up there, and he just drives the way it is needed to drive in India, except he thinks he's a Schumacher and a race driver in that
He
traffic
does. He
conditions.
does. And somehow Muhammad has the superpower that I wanted to share with all of you. He can sleep through it. Like Muhammad is so used to the way his brother drives that he just passes out. It's like a baby being rocked back and forth. So we got some actual pictures of Muhammad falling asleep in various situations. Maybe not all of these were in a car in India, but at least the first one or maybe two were. But I don't know how you fall asleep during your brother's driving, Muhammad.
I'm just extremely jet lagged after traveling from
That's
the
what it
US
is.
to
That's
India.
what it is. Okay, good.
Awesome. But I also know he's a very safe driver, probably. Maybe that's what helps me. But ultimately, Taj had the opportunity to visit Texas, where we're located. And I just thought, why not let Taj drive in
Oh yeah,
India? I was
great idea.
actually, yeah, I was actually curious to see how he would drive in an environment like the US. And to my surprise, he was following every single rule, stopped at stop signs, followed the speed limit, turned on his turning indicator, which I really thought he didn't even know existed until that point in time.
It's
Occasionally
incredible.
used his brakes
Wow,
and
this is an
had a full
upgrade.
stop. Uh, but for real, he was able to immediately adopt to the environment and drive in ways that are expected of the people who drive here without even ever learning how to drive in this country, in the United States. And that's when I had the light bulb moment of, wait a minute,
Mm.
anybody has the capacity to change their behaviors. Almost immediately, Taj, who knew one way to drive, was able to come to the United States and immediately adapt to the behaviors required on the street and how to drive and how to abide by the rules and governance and so forth. And so it got me to realize that if we really want to change behaviors, everyone has the capacity to change, no matter where they're from, where they're raised, what their background, what their ethnicity, it doesn't matter. We all have the innate capacity to adapt to change and change our behaviors. And so it got me to realize that it is the environment that sets the tone for the behaviors. And every organization has their own environment that helps foster the behaviors that are expected.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when we realize the importance of behaviors in culture. And I know that there's a very good saying by Peter Drucker who says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So we have a saying, if culture eats strategy for breakfast, then behaviors eat culture for lunch.
Now I'm
And so
hungry.
so we began on this journey to change the behaviors of our own organization. And in order to do that, we needed to create our own framework or pillars or principles to set the tone for how we needed to behave inside of our organization, no matter which part of the world you're located in. And we created what we call the 6 pillars of love. And that's inclusion, empathy, vulnerability, trust, empowerment, and forgiveness. And these behaviors or pillars are in no specific order or are in priority of each other. They are essentially interdependent on each other, and they require all of these pillars to exist in harmony and operate in harmony, just like the 6 cylinders of an engine. It's like they're the pistons of a 6-cylinder engine, where you cannot have even a single piston not sync up to the rest of the cylinders, but also fire at the right time, at the right moment, with the right force to produce maximum performance for your engine. So, similarly, our organization needed to build this framework for all of us to operate under. So, we're going to take some time and describe each of these pillars for you so you can get context to our framework.
So I want to start with inclusion. And, inclusion put simply means creating an environment where people feel like they belong, like they have a voice, not just a seat at the table. And, all of us at one time or another have felt what it feels like to not be included, for us not to be considered. For example, I am left-handed, which means that no products that are created are ever created for me, because 90+% of the world's population are right-handed, which means I wear my watch on my right wrist, which people always tell me that I'm wrong. When I was a kid, that was what everybody would tell me. It was like, hey, you didn't put your watch on the right wrist. You ever tried to open a can as a left-handed person? It's terrible. Have you ever tried to write on a sheet of paper? It's terrible. And you know what? These are just minor inconveniences. So just because I'm not included in these doesn't mean that it's ruining my life. But I did experience this from a cultural perspective when I was going to India for the first time, and I realized that everyone in India eats with their right hand because the left hand is considered unclean. It's used for unclean practices. And so I had to physically work on practicing eating with my non-dominant hand because I wanted to fit in. And I do remember a few times I would accidentally use my left hand and the waiters would give me very strange looks. They would just kind of, But again, this is a little bit of adjusting for me. And yes, maybe I wasn't fully included in the ability to eat in this way, but when you really start to recognize what inclusion or marginalization could look like, I could be a white man in a full of a room of other white men, and maybe these other white men are engineers. We all look very similar, but I'm a creative. I'm a creative individual, and suddenly, because I think differently and compute differently mentally, they start treating me differently. They start talking above me because they think I'm not able to understand what they're going through or what they're dealing with. They start to problem solve and have discussions around me because they believe that I'm not capable or have the ability to engage. So even though I look the same and may even dress the same and act the same, I can still be marginalized. All of us have experienced marginalization in some way, regardless of how we look or how we speak or how we talk or how we dress. And we started to realize this inside of our organization, that if I felt this way, if Mohammad felt this way, if our leadership team felt this way, then our team has felt marginalized too. And we need to do a better job of including everyone inside of our organization to make sure that people feel a sense of belonging. So what did we do? Well, we started with food, to be honest with you. We started to recognize that we have such a dynamic group of people from all over the world. They weren't seeing themselves in the food that we were offering. So we began to offer foods that connected and aligned with different dietary preferences and even restrictions. We started offering halal foods and vegan foods and kosher foods. We started creating this amazing symphony of flavors and colors, and our gatherings came alive with these foods from around the world. My children were introduced to Australian licorice, which they hate, but they tried it. They tried it because Greg is from Australia and he brought it. The bag was upside down and everything. So we continue to create these opportunities for people to learn and experience different cultures. And then we started to realize, hey, if we're going to India, maybe we should bring a little bit of India back to our team. Let's include our US team in our trips because not everybody could join us. So we brought bangles back and kurtas back for the men and the women in our offices to experience a little bit of culture differently. We started to spend time with people and invite our teams out to lunch. When the leaders would go to India, they would just eat with other leaders. But I got the opportunity to actually take our teams out to lunch and learn more about the people that I work with and get to know their families and their stories. And then we realized that when people first joined us at Softway, there really wasn't much inclusion at all. They just got a laptop and a seat, and then hopefully they showed up to a meeting. And we completely transformed that to make sure that the welcome experience included some of our favorite snacks and some letters and notes of encouragement. When people arrived from India, we wanted to create an environment where people felt cared for, where they felt like they belonged. And as we continued to go through this process, our behaviors began to become more inclusive as well. Because when people feel welcomed, they feel loved. The next pillar is empathy. And empathy is an incredibly important word, an incredibly important tool. But in business, sometimes people, don't really utilize empathy to its full capacity. And I want to give you a quick example. Here is my family. This was us at Disneyland in November, just a couple months ago. And as a father and as a husband, I'm pretty busy. And not everybody on our team has children or is married or any sort of relationship. And so different people in different family situations, have different experiences. And sometimes the way people react to me being busy or having to help my wife or help my children in certain situations can come off a little bit disingenuous. And honestly, Mohammad, I'm going to call you out a little bit. Before you began to realize your self-awareness and before you began to act in even ways that were more inclusive and more empathetic, you practiced apathy a lot. And apathy really just means you're going to take care of the business while disregarding the person. So if I had to take my daughter to gymnastics, Mohammad would say, that's not an excuse for not getting your work done. I don't care about your personal situation. I care about you getting the job done. So I need you to maybe get someone else to do that. And that happened. That happened to me and other team members. And we realized that this is not sustainable. Apathy in the workplace is not sustainable. It's not healthy. It's definitely not inclusive. So we swung the pendulum all the way the other way as we began to experience this culture of love. And we went all the way into sympathy, where we take care of the person while completely disregarding the business. And what people started to do was, because they saw me as a father and they saw me as a husband, they began to say, oh, well, we're just going to take him off the meeting entirely. He doesn't need to be here. It's okay. We'll take care of it for him. We'll take the burden off of you, completely disregarding the fact that maybe I could actually continue to help benefit. And, ask me how I know. They meant well, but they weren't truly empowering me. What they were doing was trying to remove the burden from me, but it stifled my ability to grow and it stifled my ability to contribute. So then we started to recognize that we couldn't be apathetic or sympathetic. We needed to be empathetic. And what that looks like is Mohammad saying, hey, I want to understand what's going on in your situation. How can we collaborate? Let's have an honest conversation about you needing to do something with your daughter. And this type of approach is where we take care of the person in context of the business. So we got creative. Mohammad, we adjusted, we accommodated. We had meetings a little bit later so that we can still get the work done and I could still balance my family life and my work life. Well, you can't really balance the two, but you can integrate the two. And that's what empathy allows us to do, is fully integrate our work and our family, because empathy enables accountability. And when I'm able to understand what you're dealing with, I can support you, I can coach you, and I can have honest conversations.
And the next two pillars are forgiveness and vulnerability. And in order to give context to this, I want to take you back to 2017 of July. I was visiting our India offices, and I was hosting a town hall meeting with my 100 plus team members in Bangalore, India. And remember, this is about 2 years into the transformation journey. So a lot of personal behavior changes had been adopted, a lot of policies had been changed, processes had been changed. And so I wanted to take a poll with our team, and I asked the question, hey, how many of you guys believe that trust has improved between you and I?
Yeah.
And I said, raise your hands. And only two people out of the 100 plus folks in the audience raised their hand. It felt like somebody had just punched me in my gut. And I was extremely disappointed, embarrassed, all the feelings at the same time. And I prematurely left that town hall meeting because I really couldn't overcome my emotions from that reaction. And so I went into deep introspection. And a few days later, I had the opportunity to come back and address the company again and the team again. And this time I decided to apologize. I decided to seek forgiveness from my past behaviors, for the way I had treated our team members, for all of the policies that I had put in place that had hurt them and their family members. And I remember myself crying in the moment as I was seeking forgiveness. And I emotionally became distraught again, and I left the meeting prematurely yet again. And then the last day arrived, which was a day I was going to head back to Houston. And that evening, the team organized a farewell gathering. And in this meeting, they presented to me a book that said, "We love you and we trust you, Mo." And they filled up the book with messages of love and support. And I began to cry again. Uh, this time, the difference was that I was smiling and I was having tears of joy. And this is something that I really had been looking for, like, been wanting to get that reciprocation. And I learned a very valuable lesson that day, which is that you can change all of your behaviors, you can make all the changes you want, but unless there is an apology to be had and seek forgiveness, you are not going to be able to overcome the lack of trust you built in the process. And one angle of it is for us to seek forgiveness, but another side of the coin is to be able to forgive. Because if you are unable to forgive, that also leads to unforgiveness and a lot of unintended consequences. For
Right.
example, I personally believe forgiveness is a topic that is not spoken in organizations a lot, but it is definitely one of the reasons why a lot of organizations are unable to move forward, unable to progress and achieve their goals, because there's too much unforgiveness inside of the organization, where if a team member made a mistake, you are then not trusting them to try again or give them
Yeah.
another project, and you're holding on to it. And it just leads to a lot of issues and inefficiencies. And the key to well, before I go there, the key to making sure that we're building a loving environment is to be able to not only seek forgiveness, but also forgive. And I love this statement by Mother Teresa, where she says, if you really want to love, we must learn how to forgive. And the key to unlocking forgiveness is vulnerability. And vulnerability is not weakness, it is true measure of courage. It takes intense courage to be able to go up and say, you know what, I messed up, I apologize. And that is the simplest measure of vulnerability that we're expecting in a workplace. We're not talking about sharing your deepest, darkest secrets. We're only talking about being able to say, you know what, I messed up. And yet, it is the most difficult thing for leaders or individuals to be able to take ownership and apologize. And when leaders are able to demonstrate vulnerability in the right way, it actually gives permission to the rest of the organization to be vulnerable. And that's how you're able to create an environment of forgiveness. And the last pillar that I want to cover here today is trust. Ultimately, my story was revolving around taking a poll on trust, but let's just clearly define what trust is, right? So trust is the belief that someone or something is reliable, honest, and effective. It's simply being able to trust that your car is going to turn on this morning, or that the weatherman is going to give you an accurate forecast of the
I hope so.
weather. Maybe, maybe not. That's a little bit shaky there. But ultimately, there are two types of trust. There's the predictive trust and the vulnerable trust. Predictive trust is being able to trust someone based on their historical performance and patterns and perceptions.
Mhm.
So you see the past history of what they have demonstrated, and you use that as your level of trust. For example, I know that Frank has been great at writing certain type of articles or scripts for video projects. So I trust him to do that, that demonstrate that skill and only give projects to that level, because that's how much I trust Frank. I don't trust Frank beyond that. So while I can say I trust Frank, my trust is limited to just the visibility of the capability sets that Frank has demonstrated.
Thanks,
Or
Mohammed.
or I trust Frank only to the extent that I can predict that he is going to make coffee every 2 hours, or I know that he is going to bring in a fitness reference, in every meeting or even in this presentation. You never know.
What are you talking about?
And then the other side of the equation of trust is vulnerable trust. This is when you are able to trust someone regardless of their past performance and their capability sets. It's being able to trust someone to go above and beyond and do things that they have never done before or never been able to show you they've done that before. And that type of trust comes from a place of risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. And those kind of environments, such as COVID-19, has demonstrated vulnerable based trust, where we have been able to see corporations trust their team members to work from home and not be that micromanaging leader, and still allow them to do what they need to do. We've seen our corporations become more empathetic and trusting than ever before. And that's because of risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. And we can create that environment if you need to. And when our organization began to practice vulnerability based trust, we began to see that we have more than a surface level knowledge of our colleagues. We were able to not use their deficiencies against them. We were able to quickly resolve disputes and conflict with each other and didn't have to stoop to gossip or slander. There weren't these
Mm.
hallway conversations about the meeting that we had just had where they disagreed. We learned to disagree and discuss it in the meeting, not away from the meeting.
Yeah.
And we were also able to act without concern for protecting ourselves. We were able to put the needs of our teammates instead of just protecting our own needs. And so, how do you begin to practice vulnerability based trust? It's as simple as just getting vulnerable with one another, being able to learn more than just a surface layer about each other. And hence, I love this statement by Andrew Stanton, where he says, "There's no one you can't love once you know their story." He's a director of Finding Nemo, and I'm sure you guys have all heard of Finding Nemo. So, Frank, hit the play button. We're going to watch
Yeah.
Finding Nemo for the next hour and a half.
I'm going to switch us over to Disney Plus, guys. You ready? Okay, let me just go ahead and make the change. I'm kidding. Thanks, Mohammed. Our last pillar that I want to focus on before we get to some results is empowerment. And empowerment is really necessary to talk about because, well, all of these are necessary because they're like a six-cylinder engine. But I want to talk about how we were empowered by our clients as we began to grow and change and become a better organization. We were a technology company, right, for the first 18 years. But we had a client at our Fortune that was a Fortune 10 company. And these are the folks that you see kind of in between myself. Chris is on the left-hand side. I'm sneaking in on the right-hand side, and Mohammed's there. These are 4 of our clients that came to an event that we were hosting because they loved coming to our meetings more than their own meetings. So they would actually skip out on their stuff. And when they came to our meetings, I promise they got their work done too. But when they looked at our culture and how it had grown and changed, they said, can you do that for our leadership? And we said, that's not what we do. But they insisted. They said, listen, we trust you. We've seen you pull off incredible things for our company. And we know that you can help us lead this transformation for our leadership team too. So we took them up on it. And in 2 weeks, we stood up an event called the Seneca Leaders Event, which helps leaders understand more about the impact of their behaviors on teams and their own performance, and how small everyday commitments can truly transform lives and businesses. And we call this the power of empowerment because our clients empowered us to go beyond our skill sets. They had never seen us lead a 2-day offsite, fully immersive leadership experience, and yet they gave us the autonomy to create it. And even though we didn't sleep at all over those 2 weeks, the team looks back at that event, even though it was completely wild, fondly, because the client was so happy with the outcome. And, Mohammad, it looks like you're here. Looks like you're still talking about that Porsche in this presentation as well.
I miss that Porsche. I do not have it anymore, but yes, I dearly miss that Porsche.
It comes up every time. So we had 2 weeks to plan event logistics, food, content. And it got to a place where Mohammad, can sometimes be a micromanager, in the past Mohammad version 1.0. And the team came to him and said, Mohammad, will you just trust us to get this work done? And the project managers that stepped forward were from all these different industries. Only one of them had event experience. And Mohammad said, yes, I'm going to empower you to go above and beyond. But there were a few mistakes. One of the most massive mistakes was we had our largest client in the room and we starved them because we did not order enough food. Like literally on these plates in this picture, that is not an appetizer. That is quite literally that is the main course. And so we had to make it right because we had to acknowledge the issue. So we got up on stage and we said, everybody, we're so sorry that this happened. One of our team members grabbed the company card from Mohammad and we said, you know what? Let's just order pizza. And as a result of us being empowered to make those decisions, trusting each other, being vulnerable, and making sure that we could help create a more inclusive environment, they saw our values in action. And that was one of the biggest takeaways for them, was seeing us live out that experience. And now whenever we order food, it's a food oasis, not a food desert. We make sure everyone is fed, not just the people there, but their families and the generations after them. And as a result of this experience, Seneca Leaders has been taken all around the world. We've hosted it in 10 different cities from 2019 through today, 46 different countries represented with over 1,400 leaders. And leaders came back to us and told us this isn't just workplace training, it's life training. We heard that marriage is improved, that relationships with children improved. And what we were teaching wasn't extraordinary, but it was human-centric. And this all came from the trust that our client had in us to empower us. So when you truly empower people, you unleash their ability to go above and beyond. And so these are the 6 pillars of love. We don't consider these to be soft skills, by the way. We consider these to be critical skills. These are the things that build high performance. These are the thing that build incredible companies and incredible teams and incredible individuals. So what exactly happened as a result of us putting this into practice? Well, I want to share quickly my results, Mohammad. My results are, this was me in 2019. And I was at one of the Tex-Mex restaurants here in Houston. I was at the heaviest I've ever been. And as a result of you, Mohammad, and the rest of our team, working with our team, I was able to lose about 95 pounds or 90 pounds. And it completely turned my life around, giving me years back with my family, with my children. And it's because the culture of love that we created to spend time together that I have success in my fitness journey. So I literally took the entire control away from this presentation and talked about me for a second. But thank you, Mohammad, for doing that, for holding me accountable and for being my fitness icon. Anyway, those guns are ridiculous. Our actual results, though, we had some of the best years financially and socially as a team. So quickly, We jumped from negative 15% EBITDA to plus 28 positive EBITDA. We had a 3x revenue increase. Our revenue per employee increased by 269%. Our attrition reduced from 30% to 12%. Our client retention increased, and our account sizes grew to the point where we were hosting some of the world's largest and most incredible brands. And then COVID-19 hit. It was a slap in the face. How do we retool? How do we fix what we're trying to accomplish? Softway is a technology organization that offers these services. We ended up being able to stand up an entirely new business with no additional headcount. We created 3 wholly new independent digital products. We virtualized our Seneca Leaders experience. And the only way we were able to do this in the COVID pandemic is because of the high performance that had come out of building a culture of love.
And so, just to show you the framework that we created to help start consulting our clients around building high performance out of their organization, and also a blueprint for us to operate, I'm going to quickly share the framework with you. So as we've gone through behaviors and mindsets, attitudes, and communication that make up of behaviors, it ladders up to the culture of love. And those are the pillars that we just described. But when an organization goes through this transformation where every single individual, not just the leaders, but everyone experiences and transforms their behaviors and experiences this culture of love, then you're able to see an environment of high-performing teams where people are able to bring their full selves, be psychologically safe, to share feedback, give feedback, receive feedback, share new ideas, feel respected, feel included. And that's when people bring their full selves. And when you have high-performing teams, then and only then are you able to create processes that truly unlock efficiencies. So if you're looking to create policies and processes from a culture of love, then it starts with your behaviors and the culture pillars. For example, if the organization, the leaders or the people in charge of creating processes do not practice inclusion, then you'll probably see processes that are meant to exclude people. If you see the people and the mindsets are making these processes do not have trust, then you will see the processes be instituted to verify trust, thereby creating inefficiency. Similarly, with technology, these same people are then responsible for innovation through technology. If they're able to bring their full self, that's when you bring ideas, whether good or bad, that allows you to innovate and create. And through this process, you create an environment of resilience and belonging, which then allows your organization, no matter what market conditions, to achieve any business goals or outcomes that they set their goals towards. And that's how we help strengthen the culture of organizations, by creating an environment of resilience, belonging, and success using this framework. And it all boils down to behaviors. Behaviors are the bottom line. Every single number on the financial statement is driven by the behaviors. So as a result, we found our new purpose, new calling. Before, my mission was to become a millionaire when I first started the company. And I guess I achieved it, but I also lost it. So now our mission and vision is to bring back humanity to the workplace. So our goal is to help corporations see the value and harness the power of human potential of all the humans who work for those organizations, and how they can bring so much more of the performance to the outcomes of the business when they are able to be human and bring their full selves. And we've been very candid to say this. To see the corporate world change their environment to bring back humanity to the workplace is going to start with you. The change starts with you. You don't need to wait for your CEO, your leaders, your peers, your team members, or even vendors, contractors. That change needs to begin with you. And you might ask, what's in it for me? Why would I care about making corporations more successful by beginning the change? Well, we all want to wake up in the morning to be excited going into work. We want to feel respected, included, considered. That's an innate human need that we all have. And that is a hell of a reason for us to want to change, to make this change in the corporate environment and bring back the humanity to the workplace. So with that, we come to a conclusion of our topic today. Thank you so much from me, Frank, and our co-authors who are not here today, Jeff and Chris. We really appreciate your opportunity for us to share our story, and hope you can do the same and pay it forward and share our story and help begin the journey of bringing back humanity to the workplace.
Thanks, Mohammed. And we're going to take, we have about 10 minutes left. We're going to take some time to answer some of these great questions that you've been posting and that we're getting here in the StreamYard. We also have some books that we want to give away. We have 10 signed books that are available to give away and send to you. So we have given the team our LinkedIn's and have they're going to be able to share those with you in the resources section. And if you want to connect with us, we'd love to give you one if you reach out to us. So thank you very much for your time today. We're very excited. This is Chris, by the way. This is one of the co-authors. He decided to make this insanely weird photo shoot happen, and I can't unsee it. But I want to say thank you again for the time that we had today, and I think we can jump into some of these questions. You want me to? Let's go ahead and stop sharing the screen, and then we can answer some of these questions.
Hi, guys. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, that was wonderful. Great story, very inspiring. I think everybody probably just enjoyed hearing that. So let me jump into the questions. We have one from Ashbin. How do you hold people accountable in a loving way? What if they aren't being accountable after many attempts? Curious to hear your approach.
Awesome. So I'll take a jab at that one. So
Please.
First of all, it's maybe there's a perception that culture of love means it's an environment of being nice and, not having tough conversations. We believe the culture of love and what we've experienced is that when we are able to genuinely care and love for one another, we're actually able to have tough conversations a lot easier than in truly professional environments.
Mm-hmm.
We are able to practice what we call tough love. And we're able to have conversations where we're able to come from a place of saying, look, I have the best interest for you. I love you, Frank, but this is not working.
Yeah.
If you are committing to getting this done, we expect results. And that allows us to not beat around the bush, not have any, walk on eggshells. We're able to just directly get to the point, address the situation. And if someone is not performing or being able to bring their best selves in the outcomes, it actually has made it a lot easier to have tough conversations in a culture of love.
Yeah, Mohammed gives me incredibly direct feedback because I ask him for it, and I know that he has my best interest at heart. And also, man, when you're able to share and be more candid and more honest, it creates opportunities for just immediate action. And so what we talk about is honesty over harmony. Like, let's be honest with each other and not create this fake harmony. And when you are able to have that tough love environment, you're able to be honest and direct, which actually gets to results faster.
Yep. Thank you.
Great. I like that. Tough love.
Yes.
Jane has a question. First, she says, this was so terrific. Thank you very much. She's the leader of a unit and will incorporate this right away. What are your recommendations for building this culture in a remote work, such as a work from home environment?
Yeah. So it all comes down to building relationships. And yes, while the remote environment has created, out of the ordinary norms of a work environment, it is still very possible to build personal relationships and getting to know your team members, practicing empathy. You just have to work a little harder to create those environments where you are able to, even in a remote meeting, give moments of opportunity to get vulnerable, to share their stories, get to know people more. And when you're able to do that, you can still in the remote environment practice the culture of love. It all comes down to how are you going to get to know your team and build that connection and relationship, no matter which part of the world they might be located. You just have to be intentional in making that happen.
Great answer, Mohammed.
Yeah, great. Karen says, first of all, she just loves the oasis of food versus
you got to
food
have good food.
Her question is, what specific metrics do you have in place to ensure that your strategies are working?
Absolutely. So the framework that I just showed in the presentation is actually also our measurement framework. So since the behaviors and the culture love pillars are all things that people have to experience, we measure how people are experiencing each of these behaviors for themselves, for their teammates, and for their leaders.
Yep.
And we do that through an NPS scoring experience model, which is very worldwide renowned. And so we just use that to see a rating on a Likert scale. How are you experiencing inclusion? How are you experiencing vulnerability with your team, with your leader? And how are you practicing vulnerability, or how are you practicing trust? And we take these measurements into consideration, and we're able to interpolate um, not only how the team's experience of these pillars are, but also what is the gap? What is the self-awareness gap? Where does a leader think his he is being experienced from inclusion versus how their team are experiencing it? And we use that gap to bring about self-awareness for leaders and individuals to practice that behavior transformation. And then we ultimately tie it back to business KPIs to show the leading and lagging indicators influence each other.
Okay, great. Frank, looks like we have a question for you from Rianne. She would like to know, how is it that as an employee of Mohammad, you ended up writing this book together? What was the process and the relationship building to get to that point of writing a book?
Yeah, Mohammad just said, "Hey, Frank, do you want to write a book?" I'm kidding. Mohammad invited me on this journey of transformation alongside of him. And I became a vocal advocate inside of our team for this transformation and this culture change. We ended up working together to develop the Seneca Leaders Experience, and all of our experiences as a group of people, the 4 authors, really bonded us and created a high performing team. And so when we were talking about getting this book written, it was only natural to work with the group of people that had really started this journey together. And we wanted to make sure that we had different perspectives from different kind of mindsets in the organization. And that's why it's a group of 4 authors. And that's why I was personally invested in creating and writing this book alongside of Mohammad, because we had one story to tell, but different frames and points of view that would help create a more dynamic experience for our readers.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's definitely good to have those different points of view for sure. Susan would like to know, what first steps would you suggest to pivot to a love as foundation business when the business is also family?
Ooh.
So I'm going to take this question. It could come from 2 angles. One is, you actually have family in the business.
Yeah, it is a family-run business, right? That's how.
Versus, or we operate like a family. So first step, like, our business is also co-owned by my family, my siblings. For example, Taj, he is a co-owner of Software, and that does pose a challenge, to be honest, right? Because we are siblings, we have our own issues and problems, but if we are able to put aside our own needs and our own egos and do it for the people who work at Software and make it about the people of Software, it allows us to really think about what's best for the people and the organization, ultimately us as a result. But if you're operating from a place where, like, we are like family, I had a different perspective in the beginning, but now I have a different perspective. I like to look at it as more of a sports team concept, because in a family, you don't have a choice of who your siblings are. You can't disown your family members. You can't just go fire your family members. So using that analogy of us operating like a family, it really comes at odds with some of the business needs. And so I like to talk about it from a sports team concept. We love and support one another like a sports team. Everybody has the opportunity to contribute and bring their best skill sets to the team for the goal of the team. But if there's anybody who is not benefiting the team, they're hurting the team, they are harming the team, we have the opportunity to send them out on the transfer portal or lock them out of the practice, and or people can get benched, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we want the best for the team. The team's needs are prioritized over their self needs. And so it becomes easier to operate in a business environment where we don't have to save our family, but then also go make the tough decisions and hurt each other. Instead, we are expecting the best performance to be a winning team, but yet supporting each other from a place of love and support for one another. So I don't know if I addressed both questions.
That was a good answer. I mean, you don't have any other feedback, but hello. I like that.
I think that was a great answer. And I think that's a perfect one to end the webinar on. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody that joined us today. You can get the link to the book right below the video, and also the 2 LinkedIn URLs for Mohammad and Frank are right there, and you can connect with them and reach out about possibly winning one of their books. And they also have a podcast, Love as a Business Strategy. You can check that out. And just thank you so much for joining us today. We loved hearing all about your story. Thank you.
Thank you so
Julia.
much.